Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Powell. Are you guys Robbie's students? I know that he was streaming, and he was supposed to be streaming earlier today, but he is a first responder and had to take care of some real life stuff. So I'm here instead. If you would please, in the chat box, introduce yourself and tell me what you really need today. That way I can best help you. He had to cancel the institutions review that was scheduled earlier. So if you want to talk about institutions, we can do that. You can ask me questions. I can ask you questions. I also have an FRQ that we could do together if nobody has any questions. So there are several of you there. Now, if you'll say hey in the chat box and what you need, and then we'll get started, okay? Also, the two links that I sent, that second one probably is going to be better for us. It's just a link to a Google Doc that we could all work on an FRQ together. It should, you should be able to edit that Google Doc. And so Soph says that she wants to work on institutions. That's cool. The FRQ that I picked does review institutions too. Okay, Sierra says that she wants to work on Supreme Court cases. I haven't really prepped that, but if you have a question, then I'm a-okay talking about that too. Okay, so if either of you that have responded have a question, oh, there's an Allison. Okay, I'm Allison too. Okay, different types of government FRQs and how to approach them. Okay. Okay, linkage institutions, all right. So as people are typing questions in, I will go ahead and start talking, and maybe we can go back to that FRQ in a little bit. So to review institutions, you've got your major branches, right? You have the judiciary, you have Congress, and you have the president, and you also have the bureaucracy. These are our institutions, and they are linked together. You should have talked about linkage institutions. They're linked to one another, mostly through the media or through interest groups. So we'll talk a bit about that. Also, make sure that you have the Constitution pretty much memorized as far as the powers of each branch that are listed. What do we call those? The powers that are listed. What do we call those? Anybody in the chat? Enumerated. Very good, Brendan. So those are and Allison, good job. The enumerated powers are those that are listed. You definitely need to know all those. And so if we want, I might have like a little poll. What we could do is on that Google form or that Google Doc that I have shared with you, we could either do the FRQ or we could do linkage institutions, not linkage institutions, excuse me, all the institutions and review those. So I would like for you guys, each of you, to vote just in the chat box. I won't put a poll up, just number one, if you want to do the FRQ, and number two, if you want to do just a chat about institutions, and we could use both of those, we could use a Google Doc for. So number one, you guys want to do institutions, or no, number one, the FRQ, number two, if you want to talk about the institutions. One of each. You guys are going to be tied. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so. So while we wait to see if there are any people who want to vote, how's the quarantine going? I'm getting kind of tired of being in the house. My kids, they're fighting. Now I know the purpose of school, to keep siblings apart. Yep. Okay, so it looks, yeah, I agree. All right, so it looks like, let's talk about linkage institutions. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And you can use that second link that is in the chat box, and you can add to it too, okay? So, okay, so I put up the FRQ that I planned on doing, but we don't have to do that. And so, review of institutions, what I'm going to do is just type the different institutions. And then if you guys will type in there with me, let's first talk about the powers and requirements. Or let's do that first. So first, let's do requirements. I'm going to type in Congress, Presidency, let's not just do SCOTUS, let's just do the whole judiciary, okay? And that's the federal judiciary, okay? And then let's do bureaucracy. You don't have to put the requirements of office for the bureaucracy because there aren't any, although it is a merit-based system. You know why it's a merit-based system now? Anybody in the chat box can tell me why we have bureaucrats now that we choose them based on whether or not they can do the job. I mean, it sounds like a common sense idea, right? But when did that really start? You know, this is like my fun fact. Yes, good, very good. And it was after Charles Guiteau, a disappointed office seeker, performed an assassination on Garfield. Was it Garfield? Yeah. Anyway, so, you know, they thought, well, maybe. So dude wanted basically a handout because he was working on a campaign and said, hey, you know, I should have this position, and didn't get the position, got mad, assassinated a president. So we now have an institution that seeks, or like a civil service exam, so that way we can make sure that people who get jobs in the bureaucracy actually have knowledge and a skill set instead of just being like your buds who helped you on your campaign. Okay, so someone is working on the Senate. Good. I'll work on the presidency. He knows age of the presidency, 35. What else? Natural born citizen. So until we change the Constitution, Mr. Schwarzenegger can't be president. Okay. Obviously, we heard a lot about President Obama's birth, which is really ridiculous, right? He was a natural born citizen. So what else on the presidency? 35, natural born citizen or resident, right? Anything else I'm missing on presidency? House, 25, Senate, 30. Yeah. Resident of the state. House, not just resident of the state. What's it got to be? Resident of the district. Very good. 14 years. Very good, Anonymous Fox. Got to be a resident for 14 years. All right, judiciary. How do we get the job? How does a member of the judiciary get the job? Very good. Appointed by the president and approved by the Senate. Very good. And why do we have the Senate? Why did they write in the Constitution? Why did they pick the Senate to be the House that decides appointments? Why did they pick the Senate over the House to approve appointments? Is what I'm asking. So, yeah, good. For a little bit of isolated from the people. Good. They're older. They serve longer. Oh, good. And up in the part on Congress, please put how long the terms are for the Senate and House. Somebody take care of that for me. So, yeah, they're further removed from the people. They're older. They serve longer. So hopefully they should have a temperament that's better suited to make a really important decision. And why is appointments or approval of the appointments a really big decision for the judiciary? What do we know about the judiciary? Life term. Very good. It sounds like a sentence, but it's, they get to serve as long as they would like to stay. It's kind of their choice whether or not they want to leave and retire. Good. And that's not just for SCOTUS, right? That's for all federal judges. Good. You put how many years a citizen up there? Very good. And we have 6-year terms for the Senate and 2-year terms for the House. Good. All right, so let's do powers now. Good. Let's do powers. Or I guess before we do powers, let's do how they're chosen. Obviously, congressional members and the president are chosen by elections, sort of, with the president, right? Give us a little bit more details on how each are selected, both the House and the Senate and the presidency. So I'll take the presidency. So I'm going to say Electoral College, states choose electors. Most states have a winner take all. All 4 delegates. So what that means is if the president or that person gets 51% of the vote, or even just a plurality or a majority, if they get that, like the most votes in that state, then they get to get all of the electors. So they don't just take 51% of the electors, they get to have them all. And that has real implications. What's one of the implications for that? If you'll do in the chat box. What is an implication for the fact that through the Electoral College system, if you get the most votes in the state, you get all of the Electoral College votes or electors? Why is that a big deal? Exactly. It could mean that you win the popular vote and lose the Electoral College, or vice versa. Yep. Which We've seen, right? We've seen that several times. Okay. What else? Because there's other impacts. I'm looking for third parties. I'm thinking about voter disenchantment as clues. Anybody else? Good. So Allison says minority opinions might not be represented in the Electoral College because only the person with the most votes wins. And so all the other people, if you're in a state like me, Tennessee, okay, it's completely red, gonna be red probably for a while. You know, there might be a shift. Somebody tell me what's the fancy AP Gov term for a shift in voter ID within a state? Anybody know? Yes, very good. So Sophie said party realignment. Very good. So unless there's some big shift in party realignment, if you're a Democrat in the state of Tennessee, sorry about your luck, because we're a winner-take-all state, and there's just no way that a Democrat's probably going to win presidency. At least maybe not for a while. You know, the first Clinton election, Tennessee voted for Clinton. And the South was solidly Democratic for a very long time. So who knows, there could be a party realignment. But for right now, you know, most people who are Democrats in the state of Tennessee for statewide elections, which would be Senate, right? Which did somebody say that Senate is a two-part state? Good. So is a statewide election, and so is the presidency. Okay. So yeah, third parties can take away votes from the two major parties, but it is very unlikely, because of the winner-take-all system, that a third party can win. It hasn't happened in recent memory. It's just really difficult because a winner-take-all system does not encourage a third party to get a majority of the votes, okay, or the most votes in the state. And so that can really hamper things. It makes us have that two-party system in place, which can be difficult if your views don't align with the two major parties. Okay. All right, good. Good deal. Okay, so let's see what you guys have taken care of. Under Senate, you have two-part state, good. Direct election with the 17th Amendment, very nice. Okay, the direct selection of House members, and it's a winner-take-all system to within the House district, right? So only one person. It's not like a proportional representation like they have in other Western democracies, where you could have like one district, and then within that district, there's proportional representation. So let's say you have four seats, and two go to the person or the party that had 51%, and then the next party that had 26% gets another seat, and then, you know, the person has the leftover, they get the fourth seat. So that's called proportional representation. We don't have that in the United States. It's one person per district, which also, again, limits third parties. Okay, good. So president is chosen by the Electoral College, good. Judiciary, again, appointed by the president, approved by the Senate for life terms. Good. All right, so now let's talk about some of the powers of each branch. Okay, so somebody take, you'll take in the chat, if you in the chat box, you'll tell me which one you're going to do. So somebody take Congress, somebody take the presidency, somebody take judiciary, and somebody take bureaucracy. And if somebody doesn't take one of those, then I'll take one. I'll give you a minute to choose. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Japish. Okay, cool. I will hop in here. If whoever is working on the judiciary will say what judicial review is, that'd be great. So I have a question come up. What is the merit-based system again? It's just that you get your job based on your qualifications. Like you have to interview, just like a private business. Instead of just who you know, they just hand out jobs. Oh, that's called patronage, when they just hand out jobs to people who are active in their party. Okay. Usually you have to take a civil service exam. Like even if you want to be a post office worker, you have to take a civil service exam to make sure that you're competent. Now, there are members of the bureaucracy, sort of, that are chosen by the president and selected, and they don't have to have any great qualifications. However, usually that's the president's like inner circle, people who work in the executive office of the president, or people who are like secretaries or deputy secretaries of major departments. Those people serve at the pleasure of the president, so he can hire and fire them at will, and he just hires who he wants. Yeah, so I think you guys are doing pretty well. I'll give you a couple more minutes to flesh everything out, and if anybody wants to add anything to the bureaucracy, you go for it. Okay. So after this, I want to talk about checks, or we can kind of integrate what we're talking about with the powers and checks, because obviously the interaction between these branches is really important for the AP exam. Okay, so Congress, one check that they have on the presidency is they can impeach the president. They try. Who tries? I don't think that who does the impeachment and who does the trial. If someone will say that in the chat box, or if you'll put it into the document. Good. The House impeaches. Good. And so therefore, the trial is in the Senate. Good. And we saw this very recently, right? Okay. So Congress has the power to declare war. Oh, let me go back to impeachment. So who besides the president can Congress impeach and try and remove? So the trial removes, right? Judges, very good, Brandon. So yeah, Congress can impeach and remove judges as well. And they've done a whole lot more of that than they have for presidents, but duh, there's a whole lot more members of the judicial branch. I mean, you've got all your district judges, you've got your appellate circuit judges, and you have SCOTUS. So I think one of the tweets that the president made was, oh, they've done this, they've impeached a whole lot more judicial members. Like, yeah, because there's a whole lot more of them. So anyway, it's important for you to know that the House and Senate can impeach and try both the president, but also judges. So that is a check on the judiciary as well. So the Congress has the power to declare war, but somebody tell me in the chat box, or maybe you have it under the presidency, how the president kind of checks that. How does the president check Congress's ability to declare war? Okay, good. And it can, good, the president's the head of the military, and so he can send out troops. However, after Vietnam, well, prior to Vietnam and with Vietnam, the president had been basically sending out troops without a declaration of war by Congress, a whole bunch. I mean, like the Korean War and the Vietnam War never declared a war. So the Congress decided to put a check on the presidency here in that they enacted the War Powers Act. And so what does the War Powers Act mean? So let me back up. The president's head of the military, so that is the check on Congress's ability to declare war. So since he is the head of the military, he can send out forces. But then the War Powers Act checked that ability to just indiscriminately send out forces. So what did the War Powers Act say? Okay, good. So the president can send out troops for a shorter amount of time, okay, or for 30 days. And then he has to ask Congress for authority to keep them there longer. Now, if they say no, they don't have to just leave immediately. They get some more time to stay, like 30 more days to stay. I believe you're right on the timing there. It might be 60 days though, 60 and then 90 if they say no. Who wants to Google that real fast? Because although I know the brief meaning of the War Powers Act, I could have the numbers wrong on that. 48 hours to tell them to notify, 60 days with a 30-day. Yeah, very good, Brandon. It's been a while since I've taught AP Gov. I've taught AP Macro, like most of my career, 8 years of my career. And I taught Gov just a little bit. I do like Gov kind of better. My background is a poli-sci background, but I'm like 40 this year, so it's been kind of a while since I was in college studying these things. So good, 60 days. All right, very good. Okay, let me go back to that document. Okay, so they get to approve treaties made by the president. Who approves the treaties? Somebody tell me in the chat box who approves treaties. The Senate. Very good, Dakota. All right. They can pass legislation. Very good. How is the president a check on passing legislation? Somebody tell me in the chat box. Good. Veto. The veto power. All right. But then Congress has another check on that, and you've said that already, that they can overrule a presidential veto with 2/3 of vote from both chambers. So it has to be a pretty significant majority there to accomplish that act. So it's kind of difficult. Very good. But there's another reason or another way that the president, while it's not really a check, the president has influence over legislation besides the veto. How else does the president have some authority over the legislative process? Good. Agenda setting. Also executive orders, because executive orders are, they're like a law, but they escape the legislative process. Okay, he can put public pressure on legislators. Have you ever seen that picture of LBJ like leaning in to a House member or Senate member? It's called the Johnson treatment. Yeah, he knew how to twist the arm. Okay, and back in the day, it wasn't done, on Twitter, but the president can certainly do that now, right? Good. They can enforce the legislation. So all kinds of ways the president can influence legislation on the front end through agenda setting, make their own legislation without Congress, or then on the back end, enforce the legislation. Very good. Okay. So a lot of the stuff under the presidency we've probably already seen. So we've talked about how he is the commander-in-chief of the military. We have not talked about how they can grant he can grant pardons. So who is that a check on? The fact that the president can grant pardons, who does that check? Good, the judicial branch. Very good. Can make and negotiate treaties, which you've already said, that are approved by the Senate, can appoint ambassadors, federal judges, other offices of the cabinet, holds a State of the Union address. Good. So that's kind of like a soft power thing in that it kind of sets the agenda without actually, making laws. Good. Recommend legislation, convene Congress. Oh, yeah. So, if President Trump wanted to right now, he could require Congress to convene if it were out of session because there's obviously a need for it. I mean, if they were out of session. Veto power, good. We've talked about that. Anybody want to add anything under powers of the presidency? Okay, so the judicial branch. As I said before, well, who gave Congress the authority to set up courts? Who gave in the Constitution? Who gave? I did not say Congress. Sorry, Congress was given the authority to set up the courts, except for the Supreme Court. Okay, so who can create tribunals under the Supreme Court? That is interesting. Congress was granted the ability to set up lower courts, right? However, military tribunals, that seems like that would be an executive thing, right? But it had to go through Congress because they're the ones who were granted the authority to set up lower courts. And not just to set up lower courts, but to the number of people on the Supreme Court. Anybody got a good example about trying to change the numbers of Supreme Court justices and how that was an attempt to influence the judiciary by the president? Good. When FDR wanted to pack the court. Very good. Was he able to pack the court? No. Good. Because Congress kind of pushed back on that. So that was kind of an interesting thing. You know, Congress did grant the president a whole lot of authority because, you know, of the Great Depression. But they kind of pushed back on that. And I thought that was a good thing that they did in limiting executive power in that way. Okay, so the judiciary is appointed by the president, approved by the Senate for lifelong terms. Marbury v. Madison gave SCOTUS the power of judicial review, which means that they can say whether or not legislation is constitutional. They can interpret the law, and not just legislation is constitutional. What else can they determine whether or not it's constitutional or unconstitutional? It's not just legislation. I'm trying to give adequate wait time. That's a teacher thing. Can they rule on actions by any? Well, there's only one other branch, right? They're the judicial branch. And we've already said that they can determine whether or not laws are constitutional or unconstitutional. So how can they? Okay, good. Executive orders. Good. All right. Just actions in general by the president, too. So, for example, we've got Nixon v. United States. They ruled on an executive action by the president. He said he wasn't going to turn over the tapes, and they said, yes, you are. We saw this recently with action on closing the borders. Like when President Trump first got elected, he wanted to limit immigration, and the federal district courts and I believe circuit courts and I don't know if it made it to SCOTUS. Does anybody remember if it made it to SCOTUS? I think it did, and they said he could limit it. But that's a more recent example of the courts weighing in on executive action and whether or not it's constitutional. It did, yeah. Line item veto. What did they say about line item veto? Which I guess that's a. Oh, no, I was thinking of line item veto, but also signing statements. What did the court say about line item veto? So, first of all, what is line item veto? And then what did the court say about line item veto? Anybody know? Good. So, the president could not just veto one part of the bill. Good deal. That was called a line item veto. And the Supreme Court is the one that said that they could not do that. The president could not do that. What about signing statements? You guys know about signing statements and who really started doing a whole lot of signing statements and what the court said about that? So yeah, the president has been, or presidents in the past have been writing down statements about particular laws or bills that he is signing that are going to become a law, but he doesn't like parts of it. And sometimes they'll say that they think this part is unconstitutional. And sometimes they've even said, I don't plan to uphold these parts of the law. Okay. So those are called signing statements. And I believe that SCOTUS has put limits on what they can say. And I think it's W that did a ton of signing statements. HW could have as well, but I mean, I really remember back in the day, George W. Bush doing a whole lot of signing statements. They could also put a stipulation on how it's going to be implemented too. Yeah, thanks, Annika. Okay. All right, so do you guys have any other questions? Oh, let me go through the bureaucracy real fast. Oh, good. On judiciary, somebody put hold trials on treason. Very good. So the bureaucracy has rulemaking authority because, you know, the laws that are passed by Congress cannot possibly fit everything in it that would be needed. Okay, so the bureaucracy is charged with making smaller rules, fleshing out the law. And Congress is kind of advocating authority to the bureaucracy to do that. One, some of the things that they have to do are really difficult. They're difficult decisions. And, you know, sometimes it's difficult for a bunch of legislators to get together and make those difficult decisions. Plus, they just don't have the time. How does Congress check the bureaucracy? How can Congress check the bureaucracy? Good. So the iron triangle is made up. One part of it is made up of the bureaucracy, but the other two sides of the iron triangle can definitely check. What are the other two parts of the iron triangle, and how did they check the bureaucracy? Good. So oversight, they can haul bureaucratic members in and ask them a bunch of questions. Okay. They have the power of the purse. Very good, Vincent. So they can just deny funding to certain bureaucratic agencies. Good. What else? Good. The Senate can approve the department heads. Yeah, good. Good. So I think we've done Congress. How does, well, first of all, no one said, what is the third part of the iron triangle? Besides congressional subcommittees. Good. So the bureaucracy and interest groups. Good. And other linkage institutions like the media can kind of, that's not really a part of the iron triangle, but it does certainly place checks on each of those three branches or three members, I guess. So interest groups, while they don't really check the bureaucracy, they certainly can influence. How can the bureaucracy be influenced by interest groups? Good. Now, when we say lobbying, how is that different for congressional members versus bureaucratic agencies? Like, what do they provide differently for those two? So the question is, what do interest groups, or how do interest groups lobby the bureaucracy, and how do they lobby Congress? How is it different? Okay, good. So they can aid in campaigns. for congressional members. They offer both the bureaucracy and congressional members information. Interest groups, because they're really interested in the topic at hand, they have, some sort of fight in the game. They have a whole lot of information about the topic in which they are lobbying. For example, teachers have a whole lot of information about teaching, and so they should sort of play a role in providing information to both Congress and to the bureaucracy when they are, one, first making laws, and two, implementing the laws, right? So they provide information for both. They use money to influence Congress. You can't really provide money to influence bureaucratic officials. However, what is that phenomenon that happens between bureaucratic actors and a lobbyist? There's a term. And there's a limitation on that term as well. And it has to do with a door. No? Okay, good. So we got the revolving door. Anybody else know what the revolving door is? Okay, yeah, good. When you leave one and join the other, and usually what occurs is that you leave the bureaucratic agency and go join a lobbyist agency, because you're going to make a whole bunch more money being a lobbyist than you are going to be a little government worker bee, okay? And so sometimes these lobbying agencies can have influence on the current bureaucrats, because the current bureaucrats want to gain employment later. Now, there was a check on this because this was happening a lot. Does anybody know what happened and a limitation that was placed? So basically, Congress made a law that you could not leave a bureaucratic agency or even Congress and then go work for a lobbying firm for at least, I believe, 2 years. It could be a year, though. But there was a time restriction. So that way you couldn't immediately go bank a bunch of money, because there could be a lot of quid pro quo happening there. Like one person, the bureaucrat, would get a job for a vote right then, or for some influence on bureaucratic rulemaking. Okay, so they kind of put a limitation on that, which is probably a good thing to curb corruption. Okay, do you guys have any other questions about linkage institutions? Or, institutions of government? Oh, I see an ask a question that I didn't see before. Okay, so what kind of positions are in the bureaucracy? Yeah, so you've got the cabinet members, but then all of the people who work for departments are considered bureaucrats. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate how much you participated. I think that when you participate, you learn a whole lot more, and it's so much more enjoyable for me. So thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. And good luck with everything. Hope you don't contract coronavirus and that you stay safe. We're going to make it, though. and you're going to rock this AP exam. So, bye.